Hi guys, welcome. And who dat? I'm Joe, and today I'm going to be examining the upcoming draft once again, and we're going to try to determine whether the Saints should stay at 14 and pick a player there, or should the Saints entertain trading down for only the second time in their history under Mickey Loomis, right? The Saints never trade down. Matter of fact, they always trade up. And so, what I'm assuming is going to happen if I predict this upcoming draft, I predict what this Saints franchise would do is, yeah, we'll probably mortgage half the draft picks from next year. We'll probably package a bunch of stuff and try to move around and go get those specific players. That's what I expect the Saints to do. I expect them to move into the top 10 and draft Darius Robinson or something like that. That's what I expect. When it's all said and done, I expect the Saints to have 5 players in this draft class, maybe 6. Now, that's what I expect. I don't know if they're going to change their approach about drafting. They've seemed to be entertaining changing their approach when it comes to lots of things. Dennis Allen is still our defensive coordinator, but we've got a whole new offensive coaching staff now. We've got a whole new offensive scheme. Seems like a whole new direction when it comes to how we're going to address our salary cap issues. The fact that we have players that are on extended big money contracts that are 30 something years old. It seems like not only has the Saints franchise acknowledged these issues, but they're actually doing things about it. Maybe. We're budget shopping right now, and everybody looks at that and says, yeah, look, we're making an effort. We budget bargain shop all the time. We have to. But every year we manage to put out some big money for somebody. And, this year it was Chase Young. Last year it was Derek Carr. The year before that it was, not as big, but Tyrann Mathieu, Marcus May. So, we always spend big money on players. So I'm not sure if we're going to change the way we approach the draft. We might be changing the way we approach the size of our defensive ends. We've taken a chance in later rounds and in rookie free agents when it comes to players that don't meet the Saints' typical prototype, drafting a guy like Vaughn or grabbing some smaller guys. Colin Saunders in free agency 2 years ago. He was before last year. He's only like 6'1". Typically, we don't get defensive tackles shorter than 6'3", 6'4". Stuff like that. So, yeah, maybe we're changing our ways a little bit all over. And maybe we'll change our approach on the draft. Trading down. I think trading down is an option that a lot of people are starting to look at and saying, yeah, this might be the best route. Because the more you look at the draft and the more you look at the draft picks that the Saints have, the more you see that, man, this isn't going to be a good class. It's almost impossible for this to be a good class when you're hoping to find diamonds in the rough in 7 of your 9 picks. Now, I've heard some sites say we've only got 8 picks. Some sites say we have 9 picks. These are the 9 picks that I see most frequently right now. So when it's all said and done, we'll see. But, like I said before, the Saints usually package picks. We usually trade picks in future rounds to move around. So I don't expect the Saints to end up with 8 or 9 players. I kind of expect them to end up with about 5 or 6. And we won't have all of our draft picks next year because some of them will be gone. That's what I expect from the Saints. But this year, I think a lot of people, even those who cover the Saints and know the Saints don't trade down, are saying this should be the year they trade down at some point. Some people say Yeah, like me, I say trade down from your first round pick. Most people are saying, man, you maybe stick and pick at 14, but go ahead and trade down at 45 and try to pick up some extra stuff there. But people are looking at it. And, even Jeff Ireland kind of alluded to it. I think it was before, around the Senior Bowl or the Combine when he was doing interviews. And he said, he alluded to the 2017 draft, which was, the best draft. I guess the one everybody's hanging their hat on right now. And he mentioned that draft and said, but, it was easy to have a good draft because we had so many picks in the early rounds. And I think, yeah, we had 7 total picks, but 6 of them were in the first 4 rounds. And when he said that, and he described it in that way of having multiple picks early, then it kind of made me think he's bringing this to the table when they negotiate what they're going to do as a franchise. So hopefully this little exercise I'm doing here will shed some more light on the depth at each position in the draft and, what would be best for the Saints. Do we stick and pick at 14 or do we trade down? Maybe we pick at 14, but then we try to trade down in the second round and try to just pick up a couple extra picks. If you trade down in the second round from pick 45, then depends on how desperate a team is. But I'm thinking you might get a fourth, maybe a third and a fourth to make a move that, from the middle of the second round to the bottom of the second round. And then, I think a lot of the really good players in this draft kind of exist in the second round. So going into the third round. So I don't know if y'all can hear Simon meowing. He's in the cat room right now, and he's giving me a hard time because I'm talking and I'm not letting him out. They're having their time in the cat room right now. It's just a couple of them. It's a routine we do. Simon's very loud. If he's not making noise, it'll be Snickers or it'll be Miko. Anyway, so sticking and picking at 14 or trading down and then your second round pick. Your second round pick's kind of toward the middle of the second round. I think your first round pick at 14, it depends on how many true first round grades you have, how many players you have a first round grade on. So let's break it down this way. First, I'm going to bring up the players in the draft that I think are too good to pass up with your first round pick. Not necessarily 14, picking at 14, but we do pick at 14. But the 10 players I think are must drafts if they're there. So we'll start with that. We're going to focus on whether we pick in the first round or not at 14. So here is the top 10 players. These are the top 8 players, in my opinion. These are the 8 players, the only 8 players in the draft that you take no matter what. You've got your 3 quarterbacks in Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels. You've got your top 3 wide receivers in Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Nabers, Rome Odunze. And then you have the top 2 tackles, which are both left tackles. Left tackle Joe Alt and left tackle Olu Fashanu. Now, these are the 8 players in the draft, in this year's draft, that I would take if they're there. Now we pick at 14. These are 8 players. Any of these 8 players are there, we're taking them. Regardless of need for the team, I think these are the 8 players that are exceptional picks and that you don't pass whether you need it or not. So do we need a wide receiver? Yeah, we could use one. Do we need a tackle? Definitely. Do we need a quarterback? Well, as long as Dennis Allen is our coach, Derek Carr is going to be his boy. And Mickey Loomis was even talking about how Derek Carr could be the future of this team at quarterback as well if he continues to perform like he did at the end of last year. So when I look at the franchise, I'm thinking, no, they're never going to address quarterback. They've got Jake Haener. They might grab one late in the draft, but I doubt it. So, but in my opinion, I don't know if the Saints feel this way or not, but in my opinion, if Jaden Daniels is still there at 14, you draft him. He's too good to pass up. You make that work. I think that if Drake May or Jaden Daniels or Caleb Williams is there at 14, you take them whether you want a quarterback or not. I mean, I'm not crazy. I don't think so. Would the Saints take Jaden Daniels? Would the Saints take Jaden Daniels over Dallas Turner or Jared Verse? Or would they take Jaden Daniels over even Rome Odunze or Brian Thomas Jr.? I mean, this is what I'm talking about. These are the 8 players that I would take, and I wouldn't even care because they're the exceptional players in the draft. Now, I'm going to bring up, and these are 8 players, I'm going to bring up another 10. Now, these 10 are the next best 10, in my opinion, that are on the boards. And between my top 8 that you have to pick no matter what, and these other 10, you've got 18 picks here, and we pick at 14. So I think when it's all said and done, yeah, 4 of these players are still going to be there when we pick. 5 of these players are still going to be there when we pick. Now, these are the best players in the draft, but I separate the top 8 from these other 10 because I think when you get past your top 2 in that bottom list, Brock Bowers, Dallas Turner, once you get past Brock Bowers and Dallas Turner, you start to have options. You don't really have an option with Brock Bowers. He's the best tight end by far. He's also an X Factor type. So, yeah, he's special. And if you choose to use your first round pick on a player like Bowers, yeah, there's nobody else quite like him. And then that's Bellamy. He's interested in what Miko's doing right now. And then you've got Dallas Turner, who a lot of people are saying is the best edge rusher. But right next to him is Jared Verse and Laiatu Latu. So I'm a weirdo when it comes to Dallas Turner. I think his build is too slim to play on the defensive line, and I don't know that he could be a good outside linebacker for us, for a team. When I look at Dallas Turner, I think of, what's his name, Nolan Smith. Last year, everybody said we had to get that guy. He was the best pass rusher, and I was trying to avoid him because it was a similar kind of build. You're built like a linebacker, but you've always played on the defensive line. I don't see that working in the NFL, so I don't know if you're going to be good enough at linebacker, and so I'd rather just pass. So I let somebody else get Nolan Smith. I think that was his name last year. Philadelphia ended up drafting him in the top 10. And then what did he do last year? I think he got hurt, so I don't want to say the guy's never going to be anything, but he sure didn't light the world on fire. So I don't know. To me, if I was running the Saints, I'm avoiding Dallas Turner, and I know that upsets a lot of people. But unless I have assurances he can play linebacker, I don't have assurances that he can hold up on the defensive end. So right there at that point in the draft is where I think you go from players that you have to draft because they're too good to pass up to players that you start to have options. You look at the top 3 edge rushers, Dallas Turner, Jared Verse, Laiatu Latu, everybody's going to give you a different answer. I promise you there are players that say Dallas Turner's the best defensive player, bar none. I'm stupid for not considering him or taking him. And that's fine if that's the way you look at it, because there's a lot of teams out there that look at Latu, regardless of the injury concerns, and they say, his pass rush moves and combos are so good that he's pro ready now, and you have to take him first. And then you talk to a guy like me who says, no, Jared Verse is the guy that I think is going to have the strength to hold up on the defensive end. And so that's the guy I would take first because I project him to play defensive end. Latu, maybe. He's kind of the same size as Verse. Not as athletic, definitely not as strong. So so you talk to me, Jared Verse, number one out of these three. Then Latu, and then Turner. And I still would rather take a chance on a bigger guy at defensive end than Turner. So Turner would be one of those guys that's not on my board. He'd be one of those guys that's too good to pass up with my second round pick. You see, I'm a weirdo, but I bet a lot of teams adjust their boards this way. You just never know. Then you go look at these cornerbacks. Now, I've got Quinyon Mitchell and Terrion Arnold mentioned here, but there are 5, maybe 6 cornerbacks that you can consider in the first round. Instead of having Quinyon Mitchell here and Terrion Arnold, you could have Cooper DeJean. I like to call him DeJean. I know it's DeJean, whatever. You could go for Cooper DeJean. You can go for Nate Wiggins. You could go for Kool-Aid McKinstry. Some people like TJ Tampa. You got Ennis Rakestraw. You got Kamari Lassiter. You've got Mike Sainristil still, who's going to be a great nickel. So the cornerbacks, I have Mitchell and Arnold here in the top 18, but a lot of people would have Cooper DeJean and Nate Wiggins there. They'd have all 4 of them here. There's a lot of cornerbacks to go after in the first round, and it all depends on what your preference is. Me personally, so what I have is I have Mitchell and Arnold because I think they're the consensus top 2. But personally, me, I would have Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell as the best 2. That's the 2 I would pick first. Nate Wiggins would be at the bottom because I think he's too small, even though he's talented as all heck. So, yeah, my list would be Mitchell, DeJean, then Arnold. Then I would have a flip-flop between Wiggins and McKinstry, and Ennis Rakestraw would be in that mix as well. So a lot of people would have the boards different. These top 18, I've just got the top 2 cornerbacks here, and you can kind of put whatever cornerbacks you want. Like I said, 5 of these guys will still be there at 14. But what I'm trying to show you is I think there's a distinct line between the 8 to 10 players that you have to take at 14. And then once you get to 14, all of these things, to me, are kind of optional. Like edge rusher, for instance. So, if Dallas Turner's off my board and I'm thinking Jared Verse and Latu are pretty good, but I don't think edge rusher is the biggest need for this team. A lot of people do. But I kind of lean towards offensive line is pretty important. I want another piece at wide receiver for sure. We've got needs all over the place. Interior offensive line, interior defensive line. We need to improve against the run big time. I would like some depth at linebacker, some youth at linebacker, and a true linebacker. And you can never have enough depth in the secondary, and we need players at safety for the youth. And then on the offense, besides wide receiver, we could always use a complete tight end. And, yeah, we have questions at backup running back. So, yeah, there's questions for the Saints all over the place. But when I think of edge rusher, I think of defensive end that can hold up against the run. And then when I think of linebacker, I think of a true linebacker who can cover, who can pass rush, and can stop the run, especially cover. I've got quarterback J.J. McCarthy here. He's the one with the biggest buzz right now out of the remaining quarterbacks. So you get Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, and then after that, you might see J.J. McCarthy go before we pick, and you might see Bo Nix go before we pick. You might even see Michael Penix Jr. go before we pick. But I'm assuming at least 4 quarterbacks are going to go before we pick, and I threw J.J. McCarthy in there because he's the one with the biggest buzz. But I think you could throw Bo Nix in this list too, because there's so many quarterback needy teams picking ahead of us. I've got one right tackle mentioned, Talise Fuanga. And like I said, down here is where you start to have options. Maybe Fuanga's your favorite at right tackle. Maybe he's not. Maybe you need a left tackle and you want a right tackle that projects better on the left side, and maybe Fuanga's not the guy that does for you. Maybe you need a guard or a tackle, and you want somebody that has some flexibility in that area too. So I've got Fuanga listed here. But like I said, you start to get into options here. Maybe Fuanga's your favorite tackle. And we're going to pull up extra players in these positions besides what I'm showing here, just to exhibit the depth at each position. And so you can have a better idea of, do you grab one of these guys now, or is there someone a little further down the board that's comparable? And in the last two picks here in my top 18 are the top two defensive tackles. Johnny Newton, and Byron Murphy. Both of them are exceptional defensive tackles. I think both of them are around 300 pounds. Murphy's like 6'1", so he's kind of on the short side. Both of them are solid against the run and great rushing the passer. But we got a pass rushing defensive tackle last year in Brian Bassi in the first round. So despite how great these two players are, I don't think the Saints address defensive tackle in the first round, especially with a pass rusher. But then again, these are the two best. And I think they are worthy of, top 15 pick. So it's possible they're just too good to pass up. But I don't think you could line up Brian Bassi in the middle of the defensive line next to Newton or Murphy, for the majority of a game. I think they all three kind of fit in that 3-tech spot. So, yeah, one of those guys are there in the second round, too good to pass up. So you start to get into, like I'm saying, options. In my opinion, you got the top 8 that are so good you don't pass up no matter what. Then you've got Brock Bowers, and that's the whole question there. And, yeah, tight end, pass catcher, I know all that stuff. And he helps block on the line, and he's an X factor, and he's a special player. So I've got Brock Bowers at the very top of the other options besides your top 8. But I think those top 8 are the only ones that you have to pick at 14. Brock Bowers starts off that second tier. Then you got your 3 edge rushers because, edge rushers kind of deep in this class, but it's not the deepest thing for sure. And then you've got your cornerbacks where the start of the cornerback run goes. And like I said, there's 5 or 6 of them that you could have as your favorite. And I expect 5 cornerbacks to be drafted in the second half of the first round. And then you got your quarterbacks right there. And that quarterback's awfully weak position in this draft outside of the top 3. You're taking a chance with J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, and Michael Penix Jr. All of them seem to be talented enough that they could be good starters in this league, but there are questions. There are teams out there right now that are grabbing one of those quarterbacks, J.J. McCarthy, Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr. There's teams out there that are going to grab them in the first round. There's teams out there that are like, we're not even looking at these guys till the second round. So you just never know. Wouldn't that be crazy if 6 quarterbacks were drafted before the Saints ever picked at 14? Then a lot of these players here would definitely get pushed down to us. But like I said, I've got 8, maybe 9 with Brock Bowers as a must pick at 14. And then after that, in my opinion, you have options. So how deep are the options? How deep do these position groups go in the draft? I'm going to pull up. First, I'm going to throw these 18 over here. I'm going to keep these 18 up to remind everybody of who they are. Over here, we're going to look at the positions in the draft. These are the tiers, how the position group in the draft and how deep they are. So your top 3 position groups, the best depth in this draft, you'll find at wide receiver, at offensive tackle, and at cornerback. If you're wanting a player that's a tackle, a wide receiver, or a cornerback, This is the draft to get one. Now we need wide receivers and we need offensive tackles. And we could also use some depth at cornerback, especially nickelback. So, yeah. So how does this work out? You've got a lot of depth in the draft, so that means you can wait and still get a good player. It also doesn't exclude that there are way better players at these positions. Just because there's great depth at wide receiver doesn't mean you're going to get as good of a player in the second round at wide receiver as you would in the first round. So, even though it's deep, you have to approach it a certain way. It's got to work out for you. Now, see, I did a draft last night where I decided to wait. I didn't address offensive tackle early. I didn't address offensive tackle in the first 3 rounds. I wanted to see how long I could go before addressing this most important need. And I ended up grabbing Christian Jones late in the 4th round. And then I grabbed Javon Foster, I think, in the 5th round. And I felt kind of okay after that. But I mean, wow, that was pushing it. So, yeah, there's a lot of depth at offensive tackle. But if you wait too long, you're going to start to run out of options. And if it's a position of need that you want. So, yeah, there's a lot of good wide receivers, a lot of different body types, and the Saints could use a little bit of everything. We all want a big body guy so we can have an X and we can take Michael Thomas's place. We all want that. But we also need a player that can get you some yards after the catch. We could also use a player that's special that can operate in this Shanahan-Kubiak system in a special way. So, yeah, we're not just stuck at getting a big wide receiver and that's it. We've got options at wide receiver. We need multiple pieces at wide receiver. So depending on where you want to go, there's a lot of big bodies in the 5th and 6th round. There's a lot of playmakers out there, regardless of size, in the 4th and 5th round. I think wide receiver is probably the deepest class here. But if you want that really special player that's gonna make the team special, you might have to focus in the first 2 rounds, no matter how deep the position group is. Cornerback, same way. Once you get out of the top 5 and 6, well, then after that, it's just a matter of preference. There's a lot of talented outside guys that are slightly small. There's a lot of guys that just project as nickel or slot corners. There's a lot of guys that are back and forth. You don't know if they're going to be a cornerback or safety. So even though there's a lot of depth at cornerback, you still have to know what you want, and you have to go at the right time in the draft to get it. The second tier, I'm going to say defensive line. I'm including defensive ends and defensive tackles here. I think both defensive tackle category and defensive end category aren't particularly strong, but there's a lot of different talent, and if you combine the two, it's probably all together kind of in the middle. You can still get quick edge rushers in the middle rounds. You can still get big body defensive ends in the middle rounds. And at defensive tackles, you can get all sorts of defensive tackles, big guys, run stoppers, and pass rushers. You can get those guys in the middle rounds too. But if you screw around too long, those options on the defensive line run out pretty quick. Interior offensive line, we're not interested in a center. There's always the option of drafting a center and moving him to guard. The Saints have done that before. But I've decided to combine guard and center together, just like I did defensive tackle and defensive end. I think on their own, center and guard's not particularly deep, but combined together, you can still get good players in the middle rounds. And then safety. It's not a deep safety class. I think there's a lot of really good safeties in this class. It's just that nobody's going to take one early. And then once the safeties start going, probably somewhere in the second round, then you might see a run on them. And, you have to have your idea of what you want. The Saints love secondary pieces. They may be in love with Tyler Nubin, and they may want to take him in the second round no matter what. We may be in for something like that. They may be in love with cornerback TJ Tampa, and that's the guy they're getting in the second round no matter what. But yeah, to go with cornerback and second and safety, I think it's a good class for the secondary. But safety's a weird one. There's a chance you can get a pretty good one in the fourth round. It all depends on how early teams address safety. And in the bottom tier, you've got running back, tight end, linebacker, quarterback. You can find good pieces all along the draft, but I don't think anybody wants to take a linebacker or a running back or a tight end until the middle rounds. And you can probably find some gems in the fifth and sixth round. But I have quarterback here too, because once you're done with the top six, then you're taking a chance. You're either going for Michael Pratt or Spencer Rattler, who's going to be around the fourth round, third round, fourth round pick. I wouldn't take a chance on either one of them unless I had eight picks in the first 4 rounds. You know, if Michael Pratt or Spencer Rattler's there in the fifth round, yeah, I'll take a chance on them. But and then after that, you're really taking a chance at quarterback. It doesn't matter how good you think the guy from Kentucky is or how good Tua's younger brother could be or anything like that. I don't think you take a chance on any of those guys until at least the fifth round. So I've got quarterback at the bottom of the list here. You're going to have multiple picks, and then you're going to have to just use one late, and you're going to be taking a chance, whether you're getting a Sam Hartman who doesn't have the ideal size and strength at quarterback, or whether you're taking a chance on a guy like Joe Milton. Give me a break, man. I would 6th, 7th round. You better give me 9 other picks besides that dude if you draft that dude. All right, so that's the strength of position in the draft. So now with these top 18, I'm going to pull up this list. This comes from Pro Football Focus, and these are 27 other players. And all of these combined are going to round out the top 45. The top 45 according to Pro Football Focus. And I stopped at 45 because we pick in round 2 at 45. So I think this guide right here is pretty good for you if you're going to try to determine whether you stick and pick at 14 or whether you trade down, because as far as we're going to go is the 45th pick in round 2. So here are your top 45 players altogether. So you think about it. Do you grab one of those top 8, top 9 guys if they're there for you? Yeah, I think so. Brock Bowers is right at the cutoff for me. After that, you have to question whether there's enough depth at the position in the draft and how good is the talent immediately behind these top 18. So looking at this list of 27 players here, and you can just look at the top, and you can see you've got your cornerbacks, Dejon and Wiggins, right there, hovering right around Mitchell and Arnold. You've got Troy Fontenot that can play tackle or guard. You've got Jackson Powers Johnson at center. So we're looking at offensive linemen now. And then you've got, besides Jalise Fuanga in the top 18, you've also got J.C. Latham, Amarius Mims. Graham Barton can play tackle or guard. You go a little further down, you got Tyler Guyton. Zach Frazier is one of the best centers in the draft. And then further down the list is when you start talking about Jordan Morgan, a tackle, and Kingsley Suamataia. So Jordan Morgan, a true left tackle. Some project him to be a guard. Suamataia is one of those tackle guard options down at the bottom here. So naturally, these are 45 players. So naturally, when you look at the bottom of this big list here, you start to look at the players that could be available in round 2 for us. But this is the perfect guide for you. If you're going to trade down from 14 and miss out on one of these 18 guys, these are the guys immediately that you have to choose from. And you can glance at this list and you can pause it if you want to look at it further, but we're going to go into breaking down positions at this point. So look at that big list right there. You don't take Jalise Fuanga in the first round. You miss out on Alt, you miss out on Fashanu. Talise Fuanga's there at 14, but you decide to trade down from 14. So you're probably gonna miss out on these 18 players if you trade down. Here's your next batch. Is Talise Fuanga comparable to Troy Fontenot, J.C. Latham, Amarius Mims, Graham Barton, Tyler Guyton? See, those guys, those five guys, Fontenot, Latham, Mims, Barton, Guyton, all five of those guys would start for the Saints. We have a special need at offensive line. It's not just that we need a good offensive lineman. We don't have good offensive linemen on the team as it is. So, in my opinion, the further down you go in the offensive line rankings, you're still looking at a player that's going to make it on this team. You know, it's not just about what the Saints need. It's about how bad are we existing on the team right now. So you've got that top list right here. Now we're going to get position specific, and we're going to start with the offensive tackles because I think that's the biggest question here. Do you take, if you're at 14 and Joe Alt and or Olu Fashanu falls to you, you take one of those two at 14 and you don't trade down. That's my call. If both of them are gone and you want to address offensive tackle, I think Talise Fuanga, and here's your list of tackles. I think Talise Fuanga is your top option, but I think you can go all the way down to Tyler Guyton here. You can go with Fuanga, you can go with Fontenot, Graham Barton, J.C. Latham, Amarius Mims, Tyler Guyton. I think all of those guys are first-round grades. I think all of them would start for this team. All of them would be an improvement for this team. So, yeah, if you have Talise Fuanga rated way higher than the rest of these guys, then, yeah, you go and grab Fuanga with the 14th overall pick. My issue is that you grab two players in the first 149 picks, and you're not going to have a very good draft. I don't care how good the player is at 14 that you pick. I would much rather have 6 or 8 players in the top 4 rounds than just 2. So that's why I'm doing this exercise. And I'm leaving it up to you. My position, that's my position, but that doesn't mean it has to be your position. This is the way everything's broken down. And if you think Dallas Turner's the guy to get, then you get him. And so then this experiment worked. My way is to present it to you this way and to see if whether you really have those options or not. I think Talise Fuanga is going to be a great player, but I also think trading down from 14 to 19 and picking up a couple of extra mid-round picks and still getting Tyler Guyton or Troy Fontenot or Graham Barton or Amarius Mims or J.C. Latham, I think it works out way better because I would rather have those 2 players. What disturbs me more than the Saints' current offensive line is our state of affairs with these draft picks, that we only pick 2 players and then we don't pick again until pick 150. That disturbs me the most. How are you going to get better anywhere if you're only getting 2 players in the top 4 rounds? Look, the Saints may strike gold in the 5th round. I think we have 4 5th-round picks, 2 6th-round picks, and a 7th-round pick. We may strike gold with all of those. Yeah, give me some better players. Give me some top 4 round players. So that's how this exercise is set up. You look at your top 18. Is a guy over here that you're going to grab at 14 that much better than one of these guys? And so then you budget. How far do you trade down? I think your first round projections are Fuanga, Fontenot, Jackson Powers Johnson, if I'm going to throw an interior offensive lineman here too. Jackson Powers Johnson, Graham Barton. You got J.C. Latham, Amarius Mims, Tyler Guyton. I think that's where you're at in the first round. You start the second round, and I mean early in the second round. You can go for Jordan Morgan, a tackle, or Kingsley Suamataia. And then after that, it gets iffy. Kieran Amangaji to me is a third round guy. Blake Fisher is bottom of the second, third round guy. Patrick Paul to me shows a lot of promise. He is built like a monster. So Patrick Paul to me is late second, third round guy. Dominique Puny is a late second guy, and he can play tackle or guard. Matt Goncalves and Christian Jones are probably more like third or fourth round guys, but I love Christian Jones. You guys know I do. And I would take him in the third round so fast. Now, when you look at these second round players, I like what Dominique Puny has to offer. And I think Patrick Paul is a good option at tackle. But I would put Christian Jones ahead of Patrick Paul. And I think either one of them would be good at the end of the second round, into the third round. So that's how I feel about the tackles. And I'll mention the guards real quick. After Jackson Powers Johnson, who's your top-rated center, and then you also have Zach Frazier out of West Virginia, who's the second-rated center. And both of those could go in the first round. Jackson Powers Johnson and Frazier. After that, you've got Christian Haynes, who I have a solid second round grade on. Christian Mahogany, not so much, probably third round. Mason McCormick out of South Dakota State, to me, is a third rounder. And then Cooper Bebe, who's in that late second, third round area, along with Zach Zinter out of Michigan. Yeah, so as far as interior offensive line goes, you've got lots of options in the second and third round. And as far as tackle goes, there's a bunch of them that are projected to go in the third round that I have a slightly higher grades on, but there are also players that are supposed to go late that I have pretty good grades on. So that's the tackles. Let's pull up another position. Everyone's excited about edge rusher. Woohoo, here we go. I think of this as defensive end. So, like I say, Dallas Turner's a linebacker to me. Jared Verse, defensive end. Laiatu Latu, I worry about his size at defensive end. Then you've got Chop Robinson, who's just an insane specimen, but once again, worry about his size. He's not an every down defensive end to me. Neither is Chris Braswell. Darius Robinson is an every down defensive end to me, so I would have a higher grade on Darius Robinson than most of these guys just because of his size. That's me. Out of all of these edge rushers here, I would go Verse first, then Darius Robinson, then Laiatu Latu, and then Dallas Turner or Chop Robinson or Chris Braswell. That's how I am. So, and I want a big defensive end who can stop the run. So when you look at these other edge rushers, Adisa Isaac, too small. Jonah Ellis, that's Caden's brother, too small. Marshawn Nealon, perfect size. Braylon Trice, great size. He had a horrible combine. And, I've got him as a late second round pick now. He was late first. I would pick Nealon ahead of Trice at this point. Austin Booker is undersized, but very, very good. So is Muhammad Kamara. So I would have, as my smaller edge rushers, I would have Austin Booker and Kamara right around where I would pick Adisa Isaac or Jonah Ellis. And that would probably be third round. Marshawn Nealon, Braylon Trice, those guys late second into the third. Gabriel Murphy, I wouldn't take till the fourth. Javon Solomon, I wouldn't take till the fourth. I project him as a linebacker. Justin Aboigbe, I really like, and I would take him late third into the fourth. So those are your edge rushers. That's a tough one for me because I'm not in love with anybody early that's a really highly rated, except for Jared Verse. And I just don't want to pick an edge rusher with one of those early picks because I don't think it's a need, especially now that we have Chase Young. I don't think it's as desperate of a need as a run-stopping defensive lineman would be for us. So, yeah, at edge rusher, I'm leaning more towards Darius Robinson, Marshawn Nealon. Take a chance on Braylon Trice, Justin Avoigbe. That's where I'm at on those guys. But that's the list if you want to do this experiment for yourself. The next position we're going to look at is defensive tackle. Like I say, Newton and Murphy are great, but we just got a first round pass rusher at defensive tackle. So if we're focusing on defensive tackle, I want to make sure it's somebody that can play next to Bresee. And I like to call that position the nose. I don't know the damn numbers. Maybe it's called the 1 that's next to the 3. I was saying 5. Maybe that's a defensive end. I don't know. I call the big defensive tackle a nose tackle and the little one next to him a 3. That's what I do. So we're looking for a nose tackle. And if you get a really big one, he's going to be limited in snaps. After Newton and Murphy, the top option is Braden Fisk, and I think he's just okay. He's still in that 3-tech mold to me, so I wouldn't want to grab him early either. Not even in the second round. Newton and Murphy, if they're in the second round, you grab them. Fisk, I wouldn't grab him until the third round, and that's right around the area that I would be focusing on. Getting a run-stopping defensive tackle. So Rook or I can't say his name. Ruke. I think his first name's Ruke. I'm saying that wrong too. But him and Chris Jenkins are my two favorite defensive tackles. I've got Brandon Dorlus written here as well, but he's more of an edge rusher. He falls into that Darius Robinson, Marshawn Nealon area. Brandon Dorlus, another guy I would take at edge rusher before some of the smaller guys. But at defensive tackle, I want a run stopper, and Ororo and Chris Jenkins are my top 2 guys that I would take at defensive tackle. T'Vondre Sweat, I love, but I just worry about his stamina. So, third round steal if you get Sweat in the third round. Michael Hall Jr. is just too small for me. He is a rotational guy. Dwayne Carter, another guy, too good to pass up in the fourth round, but he would still just be a rotational guy for me. Leonard Taylor has all the ability in the world. I would take a chance on him in the late third, fourth round, but he might only be a rotational player for you as well. He would play Bresee's spot, Then you've got McKinley Jackson right there, another big defensive tackle who can plug up the middle on early downs, but he won't give you a bunch of activity, So you got to mention LSU's Mekhi Wingo and Mason Smith. Those two would round out, and these are all of the players I'm showing you on these side lists are players that would go in the first 4 rounds. So you have your depth this way. You see your unequivocal got to draft at 14 players here, and then, well, here's your other options. What do you think? Is it worth trading down kind of deal? And yeah, my favorite defensive tackles are definitely Ororo and Jenkins. Jenkins is probably my favorite right now. I would go Jenkins and Ororo, but Ororo and Sweat would be right there. I might go with Sweat over Ororo, and then if I need a big body after that, I'm talking about McKinley Jackson, or maybe even later, getting some sort of good run stopper. There's a lot of active, smaller school guys. You got Gabe Hall out of Baylor. You've got Christian Boyd. There's a lot of pieces. Marcus Harris out of Auburn is a smaller guy, but he's a great run defender. So lots of options at defensive tackle, but it gets slim. If you don't address it and you don't grab the guy you love and you don't get him at the right time, then, yeah, your pickings become slim. In my opinion, I think the Saints are going to be in love with a guy like Mason Smith. they would consider him a third-round pick. They're probably going to package next year's picks plus late-round picks this year to move up to grab a guy like Mason Smith. That's the kind of move I expect the Saints to make, and it would just drive me nuts. Yeah, so, okay, let's pull up another one, another category here. Let's go with cornerback first, even though wide receiver's more important for us, I think. Yeah, like I said, Quinyon Mitchell, Terrion Arnold, they're in your must draft over here. But must you draft them? Could you wait? Because you got Cooper DeJean, you've got Nate Wiggins, you've got Kool-Aid McKinstry, you got TJ Tampa. All of those guys rank around the same as Mitchell and Arnold and DeJean. And so then after that, Ennis Rakestraw. You've got Mike Sainristil, still the best nickelback there is in the draft. Kamari Lassiter out of Georgia. Right around there is where, I'm starting to think you've got options now. I mean, to me, it's a stellar top 5, top 6. Quinyon Mitchell, to me, is the best one. We don't need outside corner that bad. If we keep Lattimore and we've got Paulson Adebo and Alontae Taylor, your outside corner that you're drafting is going to be your 4th cornerback. That's the way I look at it. Quinyon Mitchell, no, you go ahead and grab him. He'll be your number 2. What are you doing? Telling Paulson Adebo to kick rocks? Or are you trading Lattimore? Is that what you're doing? So, yeah, if we grab Quinyon Mitchell with the 14th overall pick, I expect to trade Lattimore before the season begins. If that's the kind of move you're going to make, if that's the kind of move you're planning on making. So, and then, like I said, cornerback is different. It depends on what style you're running and what you expect these players to do. So, Quinyon Mitchell and Terrion Arnold might not be on your top 18 over here, must drafts. It might be Cooper DeJean. I think he is a must draft. Cooper DeJean would make an excellent DB for us because he could play nickel right out of the gate and play safety and outside. So, yeah. So, like I say, everybody's got difference. And to me, you get around Wiggins and McKinstry, and then after that, okay. After that, it's second round, and Ennis Rakestraw, Tampa, yeah, good outside guys. Rakestraw kind of on the smaller side. Maybe he projects as a nickel. Then you got Sainristil still, who's definitely a nickel. Then you're going with Lassiter. You got Kyrie Jackson out of Oregon, who's had a great combine and rising up the boards. Max Melton, who could be a safety or a cornerback. I think he'll make a terrific nickelback. You got Andrew Phillips, Renardo Green. Both of them had decent combines. Jarrian Jones out of Florida State would make a great nickelback for the Saints. He's got good size, so he could play on the outside. DJ James out of Auburn, still hanging around in that 3rd round area, along with Chris Abrams-Drain out of Missouri, who would make a good nickelback as well, I think. Cam Hart out of Notre Dame, big boy and relative athletic score, and yeah, the Saints love that guy. Jarvis Brownlee Jr. out of Louisville, Elijah Jones out of Boston College. Those guys are high risers on the board right now. Charles Smith-Wade out of Washington State. He might make a decent nickel. I don't know. Once you get to this area, you're talking about anybody's game. And cornerback, you could have a list of 40 or 60 of them. I also mentioned Colin Carson out of Wake Forest, a great size for the Saints. Would be a good player on the outside for the Saints. And Josh Newton, the forgotten guy who's kind of small out of TCU, but I think would project as a good nickel. He's talented enough to play on the outside, but he is right around that 3rd or 4th round range. And so this is where I end the cornerback list. It's a big list, but it's very, very top heavy. And I think as far as the Saints go, like I said, it's not a position of need. If you're drafting an outside corner and you have Marshawn Lattimore and Paulson Adebo and Alontae Taylor, then the guy's going to be your 4th guy. Unless you're grabbing one of those top dudes and you expect to tell Taylor or Adebo or Lattimore to kick rocks. So I think the fact that cornerback is really deep in this draft is great because it's going to push a lot of other players in positions of greater need for us, to us, especially in the second round. The need for cornerback, in my opinion, lies with nickelback. And so, yeah, you would hope if you draft a really good outside guy that he can project and play the nickel pretty good. You know, Taylor, we tried it. So, yeah, you go ahead and grab Kyrie Jackson or Andrew Phillips in the third round, and you hope they can play nickel. Something like that. Nickel's a position of need for me, and I got players highlighted for nickel. Mike Sainristil, of course, and Cooper DeJean, of course. Ennis Rakestraw, Max Melton, Jarrian Jones, Chris Abrams-Draine, and I think Josh Newton would be good too. So, yeah, I didn't write down a list of safeties, but a lot of good safeties here that would project to play well in the box as well. Cole Bishop's my favorite out of Utah. I say that all the time, but third round, fourth round guy. All right, let's move on to one more position before wide receiver. We're going to do tight ends real quick because, yeah, Brock Bowers is the guy. And do you take him at 14? Yeah, he's the only one that is that special. So, but God, do you want to, with all these needs, do you really want to? Yeah, he's the special one. So here's a list of tight ends. Just so you'll know, if you don't take Brock Bowers, what do you have to work with? Your bona fide second round tight end projection is Ja'Tavion Sanders. I love Ja'Tavion Sanders. He's not that good of a run blocker, and he's not the biggest guy. So there's a chance that he's good at run blocking on the move, but I don't know about inline blocking. But Ja'Tavion Sanders is very good with his body control when it comes to running routes. He can tear you up in the middle of the field as a tight end, and I love that. This is a guy who might not hold up great at inline blocking, but he can block on the move. He can split out wide. He can make things happen in multiple positions. He is one of those X factor guys. He can line up at fullback. He can line up at your whatever, and do a lot of things. But to me, the best thing about his game is his receiving, his ability to attack the middle of the field. The ability of him, even though he's not the biggest guy, to use his body in the right way to make those catches in the middle of the field and contested catches and stuff. So he's there in the second round. And then after that, I really, truly believe everybody's third round, fourth round type of guy. Eric All out of Iowa has injury concerns. Both of the last two seasons he played ended in major injuries. And that's the issue with him. When he's playing, he is a dog. I mean, the best. Physically out there, he just looks like the best. Eric All is one of those enigmas, man. He might not get picked till the fifth round because it's hard to pick a guy who plays football and then gets hurt, major injury, comes back, plays again, and during the season gets hurt again, major injury. You're just afraid he's going to get hurt. There are some of those analysts who believe if you get hurt in college, you're going to get hurt in the pros. But when he's on the field, he is a stud. Cade Stover, Ben Sinnott, and Theo Johnson are the next three. Those are the guys that I think the Saints should address. I would rather not take Ja'Tavion Sanders in the second round and go ahead and focus on Cade Stover, Ben Sinnott, or Theo Johnson, the more complete tight ends who can run, block, and receive. And you don't have the injury issue like you do at all. So I like Stover, Sinnott, or Theo Johnson in the late third or fourth round. Then you got Dallin Hooker, who's pretty much a wide receiver, but God, he's a great player. Jaheim Bell would be another X-Factor type that you worry about blocking. A.J. Barner is a good blocker. You have to get him better at receiving. Then you got Tip Ryman, who is a combine darling. Guy's like 270 pounds. Crazy size for a tight end. He is a freak of nature. And I'm also going to mention Tanner McLaughlin, Jared Wiley. I think both of them would fit into our system pretty good. Both of them did decent at the combine, especially Jared Wiley. I like Tanner McLaughlin's ability to receive and to fit into this offense, not unlike Jatavian Sanders would or Jaheim Bell. But yeah, my favorites at tight end are Ben Sinnott, Theo Johnson, Cade Stover for sure. So if you don't take Brock Bowers, you still have complete tight ends you can get. And if you grab them in the third round, you're probably grabbing them before anybody else grabs them. So that would be your strategy when it comes to tight end. And now the last one, wide receiver. You got 3 players here in your top 18 that you have to take. Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Nabers, Rome Odunze. After that, you have a real question with Brian Thomas Jr. He's there at 14 for you, and he's probably going to get picked within that next 5 pick range. So, he is worth taking with 14. I think A.D. Mitchell's a pretty good prospect as well. I compare A.D. Mitchell to Brian Thomas. I have Thomas slightly ahead of Mitchell, but I would not cry in my cornflakes if I got A.D. Mitchell. Then you got Ladd McConkey, who is, I think, going to be a great player in this league, a solid player, but he's not an X-Factor guy. You got Troy Franklin, who, frankly, is too small for me. And, I wouldn't grab Troy Franklin unless I was picking him with the 45th pick in the second round, and then I still probably wouldn't grab him then. Because with the 45th pick in the second round, you're talking about guys like Roman Wilson, Ricky Pearsall, Keon Coleman, Jalen Polk, Xavier Legette. And then I would throw Jermaine Burton in there after that. Right around that area is where you're starting to talk about third round guys. Jalen McMillan, Jermaine Burton, Xavier Worthy. I know he had the best 40 time ever, but he's too small and can't contest catch anything. And we already have a guy that can run past everybody in Rashid Shaheed. So I wouldn't touch Xavier Worthy. I have him as a third round grade. I wouldn't touch him till the fourth round. Devontae Walker, on the other hand, I would take in the late second, third round because he's got good size. And right there, after Devontae Walker, is where we're falling into the fourth round, in my opinion, with Javon Baker, who I would take, Johnny Wilson, who on his best day is a Jimmy Graham type. But, yeah, I don't trust Johnny Wilson. I don't trust his hands. So I would probably avoid Johnny Wilson to definitely the fourth round. Jamari Thrash has decent size. Malachi Corley is a special player. He's a third round guy because of what he can do as a special player. Brendan Rice has very good size. He's a third round consideration. Jacob Cowing, very small. Fourth round, in my opinion. Aeneas Smith, same thing. Malik Washington, same thing. Both of them small. I wouldn't take either one of them until the fourth round. And you have plenty of wide receivers. You can go back and watch any of the videos I've done breaking down positions in the draft. I've done videos for every position. And if you want a deeper dive into these positions. But I thought setting it up this way was the way I wanted to go so you can make your own determination. Do you pick at 14 with these top 18 guys? Or do you trade down? And those are the options at the major positions of need for the Saints, positions that we're focusing on here. So I hope this video helps you guys out. It helps you to make up your minds on what you want to do more. I could go on and on about this kind of stuff. I've already been over an hour. So subscribe to Rosenfield 10 for more videos like this. I am Joe. This exercise is here to show you who is a can't-miss prospect and how much depth you have if you decide to pass on one of those can't-miss prospects. And I think that the cutoff line is pretty obvious. I think there's 8 or 9 guys that you have to take, and then after that you have options. And once you start to have options, there's an option to trade down and pick up extra picks. Besides this huge exercise I just provided for you, I think the biggest stat to take away from this video, if I'm going to influence you in my position, which is for us to trade down, the biggest stat to take is that you're picking at 14, you're picking at 45, and you're not picking again until pick 150. You're supposed to have 4 picks before pick 150. You only got 2. And if you trade down, you could have 4, 5, or 6 picks in the top 4 rounds. So I say trade down at 14. From 14, you could do that more than once. Pick up an extra 3 or 4 picks. And then this draft can turn out a heck of a lot better. I'm Joe. Subscribe to Rosenfield 10. And I'll talk to you later. Who dat?